Hello and welcome to episode 58 of the Alfa Romeo Driver Podcast, brought to you by the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. I'm Guy Swarbrick, and this afternoon I'm going to be talking about the events the club's running and attending over the coming months with Club Chairman and Events Director John Griffiths. Good afternoon, John.
Hello, Guy.
So we are just at the start of a really hectic season of events. So obviously with 2 years of COVID, it's the biggest year of events we've had for a while, but it might even be the biggest year of events we've had ever. So I thought we'd start, we're going to talk about all the events that are coming up. I thought we'd start with a recap of our opening event of the year and Spring Alfa Day.
Yeah, I mean, Spring Alfa Day this year at Burley House was extremely enjoyable. To get blue skies was just perfect. Our event that we last held there was in 2010, and it was a very similar April day with around 350 cars along. For this one, we sold out with 500, which was just brilliant. But seeing the blue skies again and the lovely backdrop of the hall, it just brought great memories back for me. But I think probably the most rewarding thing of the whole day was the feedback that Nick and myself got through different channels from people who'd been to that was their first AROC Alfa show. And they were just amazed by it all. They just completely loved it. And I think in the next magazine, we're going to have a few of those comments taken into the report of the whole event. But that's what we always have to remember. I think back through 20, 30 years of AROC events, and I'm always doing little comparisons in my head. But for many people, given the number of new members we have every year, it's their first one. So sometimes when things to us may feel a little bit familiar, we always got to put that kind of head on as if it was your very first one. I remember back to, 1985, I think it was my first AROC event, which was at Stanford Hall, and taking my Alfisti along. And it was just fantastic. And that stayed with me for all these many 35 plus years, and now involved with designing them from the outset. I always put that kind of head back as to what would I enjoy as part of it. And Spring Alfa Day very much captured that. We got a tremendous arrangement of cars. We didn't do it by direct model type this time. We did it by age group. I think that worked really well. There's sometimes a danger with event layouts. It becomes a bit us and them, but the shape of the bowl there in the Deer Park really lent itself to what we were trying to do. And putting stripes of red cars on the green lawns, I think worked superbly. So it's really, really chuffed with how that went. And then to actually, I think probably my other favourite was the row of 9 Zoe Yellow Spider 916s that attended. That's the kind of subgroup within the 916 register.
Yeah.
And they'd hoped to get 6 cars there, but in the end, there were 9 on the day. So what you might think is an incredibly rare Alfa appeared common.
It's a bit like the limited edition of the 939 Spider, though, isn't it? It's actually, everybody assumes it's rare, and it's actually one of the more common after red. Unfortunately, I missed Spring Alfa Day. I was stuck in a velodrome in Glasgow for the duration. So
not the same.
It was probably hotter. It was great to see that it went so well. I guess the other one that we should talk about, although it's actually happening as this podcast is released, is Southwest Alfa Day, and another really nice venue, Ford Abbey, which is actually, although it's called Ford Abbey, it's a kind of stately home and gardens on the site of a former abbey. Anybody who's a cinema buff will have seen the interior of the house in the latest adaptation of Far From the Madding Crowd. And I think that there'll have been lots to kind of see and do in the gardens around there. And certainly at time of recording, the weather forecast was warm and dry, if not that sunny. So as a photographer, that's perfect for me. I like a little bit of cloud cover to give me a kind of natural light box.
Yeah.
As long as the rain stays away.
No, not too many sharp shadows and glare.
Yeah, and not shooting into the sun.
No.
So that's Southwest Alfa Day. As I say, that's today, effectively. And then the next event is Scottish Italian Car Day, which is on the 29th of May. That's at Hopetoun House, which another grand house with beautiful grounds on the Firth of Forth, just outside Edinburgh.
Yeah.
It's described as Scotland's finest stately home. And we've been using that as a venue for quite a while, I think. Yeah, that's right. I remember the reports of it over past years in the magazine. I've not made it up there myself, but obviously Nick Wright goes up with the events van and has a thoroughly good time up there with the hospitality too. Yeah, and it's one of those, and there's a couple more that we'll talk about over the course of the podcast. But it's one of those events that's, it's organised by the club, but it's a multi-mark Italian car day. So we organise that on behalf of all the Italian car owners. I'm half Scottish, so I have to be careful what I say, but the weather's not always the best in Scotland. And I think one of the nice things about that venue, and I know one of the things that you often look for when you're organising MITCAR, is that the frontage of the house is a huge gravel area. So if the weather does take a turn for the worse, the cars aren't all going to get stuck in the mud.
Yeah, it's quite important, that one, is your hard standing.
Yeah, I think there's 50% off for people who want to go to the house and grounds as well. If you are interested in going to Scottish Italian Car Day, I think you have to buy those house and grounds discounted tickets in advance.
Yeah.
The details of that are on the club's website when you book your event ticket. And actually, I'll be at that one.
Oh, super.
So I'll be literally flying the flag for the Thames Valley section because we have a new flag. and there are still a few tickets available, I think.
Yeah, there certainly are. I think that we've had quite a switch actually post-pandemic to advanced ticket sales. And it's beneficial on numerous levels. And some of these bigger venues like Burley House are still open to the general public. We've got to get the cars in as quickly as possible, and not handling cash makes such a difference. And thanks to the pandemic, more and more people are used to doing online purchasing and so on. And it just really works and just swiftens the entire process up for getting people in. And that's going to be true of most of the events that we're going through today.
The next of which is one near and dear to your heart, which is MITCAR.
Absolutely. Midlands Italian Car Day was actually, first event was 2001 and was the brainchild of my dear departed friend, Brian Alexander, who was not only our East Midlands section chairman, but the area organiser for the Ferrari Owners Club. And much as we enjoyed the Auto Italia events, we thought it'd be rather good fun to do, a relatively small scale one in the Midlands and make it a very relaxed affair. Now, 20 editions later, we've only missed one. We've taken in a heck of a lot of different venues around the Midlands, but we've now started from scratch. So we're going back this time on the 19th of June, which is Father's Day, to Kedleston Hall near Derby, which was the first venue that we used back in 2001. We're able to keep the price down to just £10 per car for all occupants. And we've got if people do, that takes you into the whole show itself, plus the extensive gardens and grounds, the shop, the restaurant, and so on. And it's also got a special deal on if you want to go in the house. It's just £5 per person you can pay on the day. And
you say smaller events, but it's turned into a pretty big event, MITCAR, these days, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it has now. It certainly has. Our biggest one was nearly 500 cars at Chatsworth House a few years back. Last year, we were at the British Motor Museum with it, and that had 400 along. Just over that. And it's actually turned out to be the biggest gathering of baths last year, with 89 of them turning up of all shapes and sizes. So we get half of the audience is always Alfa Romeos. We know with a big club out there, of course, with AROC, and it's got the cars with the biggest following. So there's always a great selection of Alfas at MITCAR, has been right from the year dot with it. But we also get some nice exotics along, a nice support from the Fiat Motor Club and the other branches of the Fiat followers. Fiat Coupes were there in some good number last year. And then you get the odd exotics coming along too, which often capture the headlines. So it's looking really good for Kedleston this year. Now, funnily enough, we're not on hard standing and it's near a brook. But apart from that...
what could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? But we'll have some tractors on, and joking apart, it's well-trodden, firm ground, so we shouldn't have any issues. It's not too steep a slope into the water.
Well, MITCAR last year was one of the two attempts I had to get the two Quadrifoglio badged 939 series cars along.
Yes.
We got one. We got Carlos Mille Miglia along.
Yeah.
And one to National Alpha Day. So I'm going to have another go to get them both at MITCAR.
It's shaping up to be really good. They're really friendly people there. They're organising with the National Trust at Kedleston Hall. And it's shaping up well. There
are some non-club events that we're always well represented at that we'll talk about later that kind of slip into the order here. But in terms of club events, the next one is Cotswold Alpha Day on the 10th of July. And I have to say that's one of my favourite events. And it's partly because the Cotswolds is such a lovely part of the world, but mostly the section manages to combine, I think, as good a a show and shine event as anybody else with the Giro Panoramico, the cross country treasure hunt to get you to the venue in the first place, which is always incredibly good fun.
Yeah, I went on it last year for the first time in a little while and thoroughly enjoyed that. Alex had done a super route again. Although I didn't stay on the whole of it, I cut off early to try and get some photos of the cars coming into the venue. And we also managed to escape the worst of the weather that day too. But it's a great deal of fun. It really is.
Yeah, it is. And this year, the Giro starts in Morton in Marsh, which is a nice venue to start off with. And then it's a 68-mile route, which is, might be another good reason for some people to cut out early to get to the venue. But 68 miles to the main event, which is at Cotswold Wildlife Park. So it's another venue that I think has something for all the family. And there's discounted admission into the wildlife park as well. And of course, if you don't want to do the Giro, and as we both said, it's great fun, you can go straight to the wildlife park and just buy tickets for the show and shine bit. But I would recommend the Giro if you can.
We had the Spring Alfa Day there. I think it was around 2012. And unfortunately, it was also the time of a hurricane that was coming across. So we got horizontal rain striking across, but people took cover in the wildlife park covered areas too. But it was a bit of a challenge that day. So fingers crossed for a much better weather on the 10th of July.
It'll be my grandson's first Alfa event. He's an Alfa nut and Alfa Romeo driver reader, as you'd expect, even though he's only 3. But his mum drives a Qashqai, so she'll be parking in the main car park, and then bringing him along to have some fun with the rest of us.
Great stuff.
So that's Cotswold Alfa Day, and then the next one is a little event on the 7th of August.
Yeah, so we've had to move National Alfa Day back this year to August from its normal June date. So we've done a swap with the normal Mick car calendar, basically. And we're back at Bicester Heritage. The main reason for the date change being Bicester's become incredibly popular with so many car clubs now. And it has a number of its own events, of course, like their scrambles, as they call it. That trying to get an available weekend is very tricky, but this should work for many, I hope. And with a bit of luck, we'll be away from the kind of late spring showers, but I'm not going to tempt fate by saying that. In fact, you can edit that out. But Bicester Heritage is a super venue. We're going to change it up this year. It's the second time we've been to it. Of course, last time was...
Third time.
It's the third time we've been to it. Last time was very much the cork coming off the bottle after all the COVID restrictions, of course. And it was fantastic to get 1,150 Alfas along and 1,800 people, I think, which was our limit. So it sold out. We're going to have a slightly different layout this time. We've got a number of new things planned. I'm not going to give all the games away. We like to keep a few things under our hat as things get set up. It's going to include some music. I'll say that. There's something completely different.
It's not you singing through the bullhorn, is
it? There's no singing from me, but there will be singing. Yeah. We've got a range of activities in the planning and some different areas for parking as well. We're going to use the site slightly different whilst keeping the favourites in full intentions to keep the classic cars parking around the lovely avenues of trees and buildings. And we'll be doing it. Everybody asks, why aren't all the different businesses open? Well, the problem is with events on every weekend, the staff do like the odd Sunday off. And we'll be trying again to get as many open as possible. And we are aware of some kind of businesses that are associated with AROC. And we'll be doing our best to get those front doors open. But we hope to have the distillery open, the gin distillery and the craft brewery operating, which are always
those popular. Are the two important ones.
And our key feedback from the last one is there weren't enough coffee outlets and one of them broke. So that's top of the list of rider things that we're going to have lined up for this. But very much looking forward to it. Tickets are on sale, I believe, through aroc-uk.com. There'll be places for non-members too, of a limited number. But of course, we want as many members as possible to come along on the day and get those cars lined up by model group. We'll have the concourse event and the show and shine as ever, proper serious competition. We'll have stands from a lot of the club supporters like Pirelli, for example, and Revive Detailing are going to be there again, close to my heart. And of course, Alfa UK, it being after Goodwood Festival of Speed in June, we're still hopeful to have a lot of their equipment and so on available, and probably on a bigger scale than we had last time even. So we're we'll be doing our very best to get some Tonales there, but let's see how we go on that.
Yeah, it's going to be marginal, isn't it? We'll talk about Tonale again a little bit later on. But so just from an events director perspective, you mentioned Stamford Hall earlier on, and we were there for 15, 20 years, something like that. And there's a real balance between a venue that's central and everybody likes and is easy to get to and has things that people like there, and ringing the changes and making it different every year. So do you see us being at Bicester for another 15 years, or are we going to be on the move again?
I don't think so. I think 3 meetings there in relatively quick succession, it's probably time for us to have a change next time. We've already got some feelers out for and ideas coming together for somewhere different in 2023. But it is a super venue, and it's got a great scalability to it. So that's key. And again, wherever possible, we don't want to have to limit the number of tickets. We had to at Burley for a number of reasons. Where possible, we want to keep that figure as high as possible, being realistic. And that's one of those that can do it. I mean, this year we've got some superb stately homes. It's nice for us, I think, to have a variety across the country. This one being very much a motoring venue. There's other museum sites like Bewley and Gaydon that we use for different things, with supercar museums for car fanatics to enjoy. But it's nice to have the family-centred operations too, like farm parks, as we did with Northern Alfa Day last year, Cotswold Alfa Day this year. And again, the stately homes, people love them.
Yeah.
And again, we've got a great deal of positive feedback from Spring Alfa Day on people enjoying their time at Burley. And although it was fairly expensive at £20 a ticket, that got 2 adults in, and it meant you could go back as many times as you liked for free for the next 12 months. So this is the kind of thing that you do as a balancing act when you're choosing a venue, is to have that variety that will appeal for people.
And I know one of the things that you've talked about over the last couple of years is doing things at motor racing circuits and some of the challenges that faces. But a week after National Alfa Day, and this one isn't strictly a club event, although we do have a big official presence there, is Festival Italia at Brands.
Yeah.
That's another one of my favourites, and another multi-mart Italian car, bike and scooter event.
Yeah.
And that one was fully booked within hours of the dates being announced, as it always is. But people can still go along and park in the main car park and go and have a look round the cars that are on display if they've missed out on display tickets. And I think one of the things I'm looking forward to is they've always had a really good kind of Italian village of trade stalls, from, pizza and pasta places, all sorts of Italian produce. And that was scaled back hugely over the last 2 events because of COVID. But I think that's going to be back. There's an opportunity to take your car around Brands Hatch in the track parade at the end of the day, which is kind of, they start organising it by mark, but then that all falls apart as they actually get out on track. So you could find yourself between a Ferrari and a Lamborghini as you go around the circuit.
I've had that a few times over the years at different track days, and Auto Italia magazine used to organise some good ones many moons ago at Donington Park, and also at Gaydon when the track was available. That's a lot of fun when you get mixed up.
Well, it's nice to give the Ferrari and Lamborghini owners an Alfa to look at rather than
exactly.
And of course, alongside all of that, there's a full race program, including double headers from the Alfa Romeo Championship and a double header from the HRDC Classic Alfa Challenge. So lots of good on-track action, as well as the show and shine and the village. Another
good bit of variety.
And then we've got a little bit of a gap, nearly a month to the next club event, which is Southern Alfa Day, which is on the 3rd of September. That's back at Ambley Heritage Museum, where we were in 2015, I think. And that's another great venue. If you haven't been there, it's a sort of industrial heritage museum. So it celebrates kind of manufacturing and industry in the South over the period from just before the Industrial Revolution, really. The parking display is throughout the village. So the cars are spread out amongst the exhibits and the buildings on the site. There's a narrow gauge railway, and the last time I went, I was unfortunately parked in a corner behind a couple of Grundon bins. But that's my own fault for turning up in a Ferrari California. So they put me out of the way from all the proper cars.
Oh dear, I like it.
And then a week after that, probably Northern Alfa Day.
That's right. So we say probably that the venue is all but booked at Lotherton Hall near Leeds, another beautiful country house that also has a bird garden, so something slightly different for people to enjoy. We're just finalising with Nicholas Williamson, the Yorkshire section secretary, and his team there. We're just finalising the date. It's possible that it's going to be a bit later in September. The venue's got a few things up its sleeve with some other operations, but we'll get that date confirmed as soon as possible. But again, it's lovely to bring back that name, Northern Alfa Day, as well. It always used to be on the calendar for 20, 30 years in my lifetime as a club member, and it means that we'll get some involvement not just from Yorkshire section, but the guys over in the Northwest Lancashire and so on too. And I think that's important because we've reeled off a load of stuff here, and it's not just a dedicated events team that's making these happen. It is area sections. Spring Alfa Day was down to Lincolnshire and East Midlands sections making it work on the gate, doing all the marshalling, the pre-event prep and so on. None of these would work without that involvement. So a big thank you from me, from everybody who gets involved in events across all levels in the club, as it were. It just couldn't happen without you.
I know there'll still be people on the far end of the Cornish Peninsula and north of Aberdeen who have to travel a reasonable distance. But Southwest Alfa Day is on the Devon-Dorset border, and we've got events pretty much spread out all the way up to Edinburgh. So everybody should have an event somewhere near them.
Yes, within a drive, and you're in a car club, enjoy driving your car to that event.
Absolutely.
That's part of it for me, always has been.
So we talked about the kind of traditional show and shine events. There's a couple of other things happening. Obviously, we always have a club presence at the Silverstone Classic, so there'll be a display area alongside the racing there. And we've got the NEC Classic car show towards the end of the year. We've got a couple of slightly different things coming up this year. We've got a couple of track days at Kerborough. I think the first one is sold out, pretty close to being sold out.
Yeah.
And then two more in July and August.
July and August, yeah. So I'm just fresh back from one yesterday, actually, which was where East Midlands section had booked it. Glorious sunshine all day. Fantastic selection of 20 varied cars there. I mean, it's a 0.9 of a mile circuit, but there were three guys who'd not done it before on it, and they came to me afterwards. I was just checking everything's okay. They said, John, it was just superb fun. And not just the fact that you could take your car around, you're on your own, so there's no Subaru up your chuff as you can get on some track days. There's no pressure from that angle. You're on track for maybe 5 or 8 minutes tops, so you're not thrashing your car to death. And there's just a real sense of camaraderie in the paddock. Part of the best fun was actually having a ride with a pal as passenger in their car just to see what they're like. So I've had yet another 4C fix, a 1750 GTB fix, a 1750 Berliner fix, and oh my goodness, it was just a superb day. Really,
it's almost as well as a track day, it's the ultimate blagger ride.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and never be afraid of asking if you go on one. And this year we've been able to keep the cost down to just over 40 quid for a full day's entertainment. Yeah, it's just brilliant.
Well, when you compare that to a proper circuit, you're looking. Normally at minimum of 150 and probably closer to 300 quid for most full track days.
And even with 20 cars there, everybody had more than enough goes. They genuinely did. So you get your money's worth out of it. You really do. Super place, central in the country. If you've not booked, I do recommend it. Really, really good.
The other place the other event we've hinted about but haven't quite got to yet is the Goodwood Festival of Speed, which is not that far away. So that's the 23rd to the 26th of June. Not a club event in any traditional sense. And, there's no club stand, there's no club display. But what there will be this year for the first time for people to see, I think both static and on the hill climb, is Tonale.
Exactly. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people looking forward to physically seeing that car. I'm expecting quite a buzz around it, and certainly talking to Damien Daly, boss of Alfa UK, he's really keen for there to be a super display on for everyone to see. Stellantis are right behind that car. Obviously, it's the one it's Alfa's first foray into electrification. The initial cars we'll see here are going to be the mild hybrid, but with the more powerful plug-in hybrid to come next, probably back end of this year. Realistically, UK, early next.
Yeah, we might see it this year. year, but nobody will nobody will get the keys handed to them until probably January, February.
Correct. I think it'll be really, really terrific to see. And as part of that, we're also going to be very soon announcing a competition for club members to be able to win a pair of tickets for Goodwood Festival on, I believe it's the Saturday. So it'll be one of the full-on days rather than a preview day. Details of that will be announced very soon.
Brilliant. And that's part of our, I think, increasingly close relationship with Alfa UK.
100%, yeah.
And there's a couple of other areas that we're working with that we'd like members' help with. The first one is we're on the search for a family. We're trying to find a multi-generational Alfa Romeo family. So ideally, a grandparent, a parent, and a child, or maybe a cousin or a nephew or an uncle, but at least 3 generations of Alfa enthusiasts within the same family. We can't say why yet, but we're going to do something special for them if we can track them down.
Yeah.
So if you are in a family like that, or you know of one, drop me a line at editor@aroc-uk.com and we'll let you know more details probably in a future podcast or maybe the next issue of the magazine.
Been racking my brains to think of some.
Loads of two-generation ones.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. 2-gen all over the place.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll have somebody that maybe had an Alfa Sud in the 70s and then it's cascaded over the next 2 generations.
Yeah.
Hopefully there'll be something out there.
And I guess, given the context of why we're looking, which we're keeping secret, if there's a 2-generation family where the previous generation was an Alfa enthusiast, but sadly no longer with us, we'd love to hear from you as well. But it's about that inheritance of the Alfa virus, if you like, genetic transmission of the Alfa virus.
Well, it's gone into 2 layers from me so far, but not quite on the 3rd yet.
Mine seems to have skipped a generation, so my grandson's a big fan. Although,
there you go.
I was going to say at 3 he's not got his own Alfa, but he has. He's got a battery-powered 4C.
Fantastic. I think there might be quite a few of those about there. I know they sold a lot of them.
Yeah. And then the other interesting thing we're doing with Alfa, and you'll get more details of both of these in the Notizzario newsletter, which comes out in a week or so, is we're looking for your opinion on the best driving roads in the world. So I'll take you through the list of candidates in a minute. But before we do that, I just thought I'd ask you what your favourite driving roads are.
So I've had a glimpse at the list that Alfa are suggesting, and sadly I've been close to a couple of those, but not physically on them. So probably my favourite's the B6047 from Market Harbour to Melton Mowbray, but I don't think that's on their list.
It's not. No, maybe it needs a snappier name.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we could come up with something like the Bilston bypass or something. I don't know, but that's not quite the cachet of the Stelvio.
No. I think my favourite UK roads, there's obviously some great roads up in Scotland and North Wales, but one of my favourite is the roads over the top of the Brecon Beacons around Penderyn in Wales, in South Wales, which are fantastic. Which is where we shot the Stelvio review when we had the Stelvio Quadrifoglio a couple of years ago. They're just fantastic roads, provided the roads aren't covered in sheep as you come across a blind bend.
My now wife wondered why I always liked to go on holiday to North Wales and Conway and so on, but when we had an Alfa Sud, and it was mainly because of just going back a few miles in the mountains. Yeah, marvellous.
As I said, we'll have all the details and how you can vote in the next newsletter. Just a sample from the list. I won't go through the whole list. The Stelvio Pass is an obvious one to be on there.
Mm-hmm. Great
Ocean Road in Australia, which I think technically I have driven a very small section of, but not enough to form an opinion. The Transfigaro, I can't even say it. The road that Clarkson thinks is the best road in the world in Romania.
Oh, yes.
Which, when you see the picture, if you haven't seen it before, when you see the picture on the survey form, it does look amazing.
I remember the show they did. Yeah.
It was one of Ceausescu's great follies, wasn't it? Because the last section of it's only actually open for about a week in the summer because the weather's so bad.
That's the one.
The Julier Pass in Switzerland, which is a cracker. Route 66, which, again, I have driven bits of Route 66, both the original road and the the bits that have replaced it.
Yeah.
I think Route 66 is probably more about the things you see while you're driving along it rather than actually being a great driving road.
Yeah.
Although there are some nice twisty bits in places. The Amalfi Coast Road in Italy.
Yeah, spectacular.
Which I think is the pronounceable Transalpina Pass in Romania. I know we actually have a couple of Romanian members, so if somebody can give us a pronunciation guide to Transfagarasan Pass, that would be fantastic. And then a few closer to home, the Ring of Kerry in Ireland, which again I've driven parts of, but not all of, and the absolutely spectacular Milford Sound Highway in New Zealand, which is I think that should be on everybody's bucket list. Maybe that's just me. So anyway, the idea is that we'll send you out a link to the list of 20 roads, and we'd like you to rank your 10 favourites out of the 20. And again, details in the next newsletter, but there will be a pretty spectacular prize. That's a pretty busy year. I think probably the next time you and I will be together will be Mitcar on the 19th of June. So
looking forward to that then. One. It's Father's Day, but so all fathers should demand that they go there as recognition for the hard work they do all year.
Thanks for taking the time to go through those. And I'm sure we're all looking forward to seeing lots of members in lots of venues around the country. Thanks, John.
Great. Thanks, Guy.
Because of the sheer number of events over the next couple of weeks and the Jubilee bank holidays, we're going to take a slightly longer break than normal, and we'll be back in 3 weeks' time on Sunday, the 12th of May. Episode 59 will be available to download from 1:30 p.m. from all the usual places, plus a few new ones, including TuneIn Radio and Samsung Podcasts. Until then, stay safe.